Today on the podcast, I have Candace Johnson. Candace, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
So, you're an editor, a longtime editor. You're now writing your first novel. Your daughter has a book published. So, clearly, writing is in the family. Has it always been that way?
Um, I think so. I mean, the arts are definitely in my family. My grandparents were both fine artists, sketch, oil, watercolor, that sort of thing. My parents were musicians. My brother and sister and I were all musicians. My brother was a great artist as a child. I think he kind of dropped that for other things. But, we've always been in the artistic world. Um, One of the things that I've always loved was writing, and I can't even tell you how many pen pals I had over the years. Back in the day when we used to write letters to people and postage was expensive, I'd buy those Aeropost really thin paper letters that you'd write on and then fold up and mail. And I had pen pals all over the world. And I think that was probably the start of my love for just getting my thoughts down on paper. I wasn't much of a journal keeper, but I wrote a lot of letters.
How would one find a pen pal like that?
Oh, in those days, there were services that would connect you with people, or somebody would know somebody, and they had a daughter or a cousin or somebody who was looking for a pen pal in the US. So it was fun. I got them from a lot of different ways.
And did that come from an interest in hearing about other cultures, or where did
Yes.
that desire to connect come from?
Yes, I've always loved the idea of travel, and once I was old enough to start doing it, I traveled a lot. One of my favorite things to do used to be going to an airport and just watching people. I've just always been fascinated by how different people are and the things they do and say and the way they walk and how they dress. So having pen pals in other countries gave me an opportunity to get to know young people my own age or within a couple of years of me and learn about their culture. We talk about our families and things that we ate and what school was like. It really was a great education.
Well, that natural curiosity for other people, I mean, lends itself absolutely to you now being a novelist, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that natural curiosity about people and what makes them tick is really the core of novel writing.
I think so. I think it is. And I've always been really interested in psychology and really in anything that has to do with the things that make us tick as humans. It's just fascinating to me.
What sort of things did you study in school?
I was I was always planning to go to college. I actually did a dual enrollment in high school so that I could get finished with high school faster and get into college. But my parents were right in that income bracket where they made too much for me to qualify for scholarships and financial aid, but not enough, to get what I really needed. So I ended up going to a community college. And when I had a couple years under my belt and I was just tired of school at that point. So I thought, I'm going to take a year off and just work full time and save some money so I can go back to school. I think it was 25 years later when I finally went back. Life kind of got in the way.
You probably heard me tell this story. I did my master's in 12 months rather than 2 years. But what that
Mhm.
meant was I couldn't apply for my PhD in the fall semester because I had just defended. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll take 3 months off and I'll apply for my PhD in the winter semester. That was 20 years ago. So we'll
Yes.
see if it may be 25. I might circle back around.
Yeah. Well, I did end up going back to school, and my plan was to be an English major, which is, well, actually I went in with the idea of doing a medical degree. I've always been really interested in optometry. My mother worked for an optometrist. I thought it was a fascinating field. But the math killed me. I got as far as trigonometry, and then I was done. I couldn't hack it. So I thought, okay, well, I've always loved English. I love to read. I love to write. Uh, but my parents, bless their hearts, they had my best interests in mind, but they really discouraged me when I was a kid. They discouraged me from doing anything that would put me in an artistic field because you can't make a living doing that. That should be your hobby. If you want to write, write by all means, but get a degree in something that you can use. So I decided to, when I went back to school, I decided to be an English major, probably teach. Uh, and I did do some substitute teaching and some internships, and I did not love teaching. I think I was good at it. I was offered jobs, but my heart wasn't in it. But my last semester as a senior, I decided to do a work study program, mostly to figure out if there was something else I could do besides teach. And one of the opportunities was working for a small publisher. So I applied for that job, got it, and absolutely loved it. I was doing the gruntiest of grunt work and I couldn't get enough. I loved it. I thought, okay, publishing might be where it's at, and it was. It was. I was there. I over time. Once I graduated, I ended up working for that publisher, first on a part-time basis, then full-time. And when I left 8 years later, I was the managing editor of the editorial department. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
I come from the indie world, so most of the people I know and connect with are self-published or small business people helping self-publishers. So you're one of the people, the few people I spend a lot of time with and have had on this show who comes from that traditional publishing background. So very curious to hear what were the lessons learned. I think sometimes it can be an opaque industry. So as someone who's spent time in traditional publishers. What insights do you have to share with someone like me who spends all his time in the indie world?
Sure, sure. Good question. First, I have to preface it by saying I've been out of that world for a couple of decades. It's been a while. I decided to hang out my shingle and be a freelance editor. It was around 2008 when the publishing world really kind of imploded with ebooks. And of course, that was going to be the death of books, as you recall. Far from it, as it turns out, but that was the fear at the time. And the publishers, all of them were shrinking. The big, what was it, big seven or eight originally, and it shrunk down and shrunk down. The company I worked for was a smaller, I would say, mid-sized publisher, family owned, and they tightened their belts, and it got pretty rough. But the basic tenet was always the same, and I think still is the same, and that is to find that magical book by that unknown author who is going to just make the list and rake in millions of dollars for the year. That's, that's their goal. Every single one of them, big and small. It's a business. And I think authors need to remember that it's a business. It's not when you get a rejection to a query or you get into an argument with an editor about your vision versus their vision for the book, it's not personal. It's never personal. It feels like it, but it's a business. So the best advice I have for someone who wants to go the traditional route is treat it like a business. Treat and be professional.
Being the person on the team looking for that, magical breakout book, have you spotted them, or is it more often a surprise when something does break out?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. One of the first things that I did that made me fall in love with working for a publisher was help one of the editors with their slush pile. You could probably imagine, based on what you've read, how many uh, manuscripts an editor receives. That's after they've already gone through agents, and these are just the agents sending in manuscripts for the editors to consider. And in those days, things weren't submitted electronically. Remember, this is 20 years ago now. Almost everything came in a big, thick manila envelope, printed, double spaced, exactly according to the submission guidelines that the publisher had. And they piled up and piled up and piled up on the credenza behind you. And so an editor was lucky enough to get somebody like me, an intern, who could sit there and read through things and say, nope, this doesn't fit the parameters. Yes, you might want to take a look at this. That was a lot of fun for me, for someone like me who hadn't had the opportunity to read all of these types of submissions. all I'd ever read was polished published works. And here I got to see what something looked like way before it got to that stage. Some were great, some were horrible. Even I could tell they were horrible.
Well, 2008, you mentioned that the industry changing then, and that was really the birth of my job. The birth of the writing coach industry really came out of the industry changing, and all these professionals like yourself
Yes.
who'd worked in traditional were suddenly headed out into the freelance world, and from that freelance world of helping writers, editorial careers were birthed, but also the kind of writing coach industry, these people who help writers get their books written, because the help just, it wasn't there anymore in terms of being able to go back and forth with an editor the way Hemingway or Fitzgerald did back in the day.
Very true, very true. But the benefit in the long run, from the benefit of hindsight looking back, is that, as you say, it was the birth of really a whole different way of publishing. And the thing that I like the best about being an independent in this field is that I can focus on the things that I enjoy, that I'm good at. I can't lay out a book. I can't do a lot of things, but I know my field, my expertise, and I love working with clients who want to learn. I just found that so much fun to be able to help them realize their dream. And I'd say that's probably been the best part of my job as an editor is helping other people's dreams come true. It's so exciting. As a published author, you know what it's like to hold that book in your hand and say, "I did this." And I enjoy it from the sidelines as somebody's helper, just saying, "Look at this book you made." It's very exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I get that joy every time a client publishes, but not even just publishes, just seeing their manuscripts improve, seeing their technique
Yes.
get better. Like all of that lights me up. It's really pleasurable to play a small role in helping someone achieve their dreams. It's
It is.
um,
It really is. And I find, well, I used to ask clients for testimonials to put on my website. Most of them are still there. Um, but one of the things that I heard over and over again was that working with me was, and I think a lot of editors can say this, working with an editor is like getting a crash course in writing. It's
mm,
it's very, very focused on what this particular manuscript is, not writing in general. But theoretically, you've come into the game with some knowledge of what you're doing. You've learned a little bit about writing, but working with an editor can very often just elevate that expertise to another level. I primarily worked as an editor with nonfiction authors, and many of them are experts in their field. They just didn't know how to get that information across. I did. I was able to help them, package that information into a sellable product that really showcased their expertise. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do for somebody. Really enjoy it.
I think there's some confusion at times in terms of what an editor does, because there's so many different types of editors, from an
Yes.
acquisition editor to a line editor to a developmental editor to a copy editor. So from your perspective, how do you define the work of a copy editor?
Um, as an independent who works primarily with indie authors, I tend to combine services. In the old days, in the traditional publishing model, you had one editor who worked with you on developing the content. Then you worked with another one who worked with you on the sentence level or the paragraph level. Then you had another one. And these different experts would work with you on a specific part of your book all the way through the final proofread. And usually there were two or three proofreads too before a book went to publication. So in today's world, nobody can spend $10,000, $20,000 on editors. Well, maybe not nobody, but most of the people I work with can't, and the people you work with can't. But as an author, that what you've produced and what you've seen published aren't always completely jiving. And that's where an editor can come in. They have the professional expertise to know what the market is, to understand how to help you get your book to where it needs to be. And I've forgotten the question. Oh, how do I define a copy editor?
Well, it's funny, because I'll have clients sometimes and they'll be like, I know I need a copy editor, but I'd also like, some developmental help. And I'm like, just hire a copy editor. They can't help themselves. Every copy editor
Yes.
I've ever worked with has given me every other kind of editorial support you can ask for as well.
That is so true. I cannot let something slide if it's not right. I get hired to do a copy edit, which is, more language based, the way sentences are structured, word repetition, all of those kinds of things. But if there's a big glaring error, or if an author has assumed that the reader understands something and it's not making sense, those kinds of things I always call out to an author in my notes and say, consider adding more here. This concept isn't clear. Or maybe, have you seen this resource? I think it has a better definition that will be more appealing to your audience. There are a million things that an editor might comment about like that. But you're right, we can't help ourselves. We have to go in there and say, you might want to tweak this a little because it'll make your book better.
You mentioned earlier just an example of people arguing with editors or fighting with editors. And for me, I'm just like, this entire person's job is to make your work better. It's not someone to argue with. They're here trying to do everything they can to make you look good. So, from your perspective, as someone who's done this for so long, what are the makings of a good author editor relationship? What sort of things are you hoping to develop with your clients when you're working with an author?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think one of the things that most authors are afraid of is having their writing changed, having their voice taken away from them. They're very fearful that an editor is going to steal their story, try to make, write their own book based on your terrific idea. No, it's not going to happen. It just isn't. That's not the way a professional editor works. We're not trying to take your story. We're not trying to take your concepts. We're not trying to change your voice to make it our own. That just isn't reality. If someone is working with an editor and they feel that that editor is trying to rewrite their work and make it sound more like the editor than the author, that's something to have a conversation about with right from the beginning, because that's not acceptable. I will say, though, from the editor's perspective, that I've had over the years a couple of people who have come to me, and I always do a sample edit before, we enter into an agreement. And I've had a couple of authors who have said, this, I don't want to change this. I don't want to change this. I don't want to change anything. I want it just the way it is. Just fix the periods and the quotation marks. I don't want to change it. Then it's up to the editor to decide, can you put your name on something that you know is substandard? Because it is. It hasn't been, it's like you didn't even bother to hire an editor if you're going to argue all the time. As the author, you always have the final say. In traditional publishing, maybe not. I'm not sure how that's going these days. It used to be that sometimes authors were overridden. Their choices were not, particularly in fiction. This is not going to work this way, so we're going to change the ending. And that's a hard thing for an author who has birthed this book. But always remember that the idea is to make this the best book it can be. And sometimes other people have ideas for what will sell that aren't necessarily jiving with the editors. But that's different from a copy editor. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there. The copy editor is trying to make what you wrote sound even better,
Mhm.
make it clearer, make it more melodic, make it flow, whatever the feel of that manuscript is, the enhancement is where the editor comes in. But changes should be made with track changes. And if I don't like what you're suggesting, I don't have to accept it. I just don't. Now that might be at my own peril. If you say you've used this word 60 times in the last 40 pages, and I say I don't care, I want to use the word, okay, that's on me. I know you've told me, you've given me your professional opinion, and I've decided to ignore it. Okay, There's not a lot you can, as the editor, can do about that. But I do think that it's worth having conversation with your editor if there's something major that you disagree with, because everybody has their own opinion on something. Nobody's God. Nobody's absolutely correct. So why, editor? Why did you change small puppy to dog? Or, put this sentence in a different tense? What was the reasoning behind it? And a good editor will be able to explain their reasoning.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one technique I often use is I'll just accept every track change I get, and then I read back over it. And if something feels wrong reading over, then I'm like, oh, that was a change I didn't agree with. But if it all reads fine, then clearly they were good revisions, they were good edits,
Yeah.
right? So maybe I'm just lazy, but the idea of like going change by change and arguing every one, when I hire a copy editor, I put my faith in their expertise, and I say, if they changed something about that sentence wasn't working, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have changed it. So I trust them,
Yes.
and just tend to accept all, and then just read over and see if anything feels not like me or my voice or that sort of thing.
Right, right. And that's really the bottom line is, does it sound like something that you would write? Maybe it's not exactly the words you wrote, but if it sounds good, it's good. And for whatever reason, the editor made that suggestion. I have had clients who say, you don't even have to track the changes. I trust you. Just fix it." I can't do that. That scares me because it's not my work, it's your work. I want you to at least see what I did. So I'll send two copies.
It's so funny. I spend so much time in track changes that when I sit to work on my own stuff and I'm revising, I'll be like, oh my gosh, track changes aren't on. This feels so wrong. It feels so wrong to delete a sentence and not have like a historical log of the fact that I made this change.
That is so true. So true. It's really hard too, take off the editor hat, put on the author hat, switch back and
Mm.
forth because you really are using a different part of your brain.
Well, let's get into that, because that is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because it's certainly something I struggle with. You're an author now. You're deep into your first novel.
Yes.
How hard is it to, I think in my notes here I literally said take off the editor hat and put on the author hat. How do you manage that?
I find it very difficult not to keep
Mhm.
editing my own work. That's
Mhm.
probably the most challenging thing for me. I just can't write a sentence without trying to make it be as good as I can make it. And that slows me down. I know it does. And I hear your voice in my head saying, just keep moving forward. You can edit it later. Now that I'm in revisions, I am editing it later, and it's so much better. I like it so much better. I have
Well,
just too many years in editing, I think, to not be trying to fix things.
but I think also all that experience in editing, you have at least the understanding that this thing gets better in stages, right? So
Oh,
many first time novelists, they don't know revisions even exist, or they say I'm going to be the magical unicorn who gets everything perfect the first try. It's got to be at least somewhat relaxing to be able to go and say, hey, I know that editing is as big a part, if not a bigger part, of the creative process than first drafting.
oh, that is so true. And it is a huge part of it. As an editor, when I've received something that is obviously a first draft, I do try to very gently suggest to the author that since they haven't ever had anybody but me see it, they might want to do a little bit of revising, maybe have a trusted colleague read it first. It will save them money. Because if I am doing everything, including their revisions for them and suggesting changes, and we're going through two or three drafts, it's going to cost them a small fortune. There's so much they can do on their own and should do on their own because it's an important part of the process. Just having a great idea isn't a book. It just isn't.
When what are some of the signs that a book is ready to go to a copy editor? Say I'm an indie author, I've been working on this book on my own, maybe read some craft books, I'm in Kevin's coaching program or whatever, how do I know the manuscript's ready for you to look
I think if the author has had feedback, maybe a critique group, maybe a trusted friend or two, maybe their English professor. I mean, it almost doesn't matter as long as it's not your mom or your spouse who are going to love everything you write. As long as it's somebody with a critical eye who I think it could potentially be in your target audience is the best. Maybe if you're writing nonfiction, it's a coworker who knows the topic. Or if it's fiction, it's somebody who loves to read those sci-fi novels and that can give you good critical feedback. At least that. That's the minimum, is to have somebody else's input. That can be a little dangerous because what you're not looking for is somebody to tell you how to rewrite your book. You're looking for ideas on, in fiction, is the plot working? In nonfiction, is the structure, does it make sense and is it helpful? If it's, say, a self-help book or something along that line. So having had some feedback is a very positive thing. It doesn't take a lot of feedback for any of us to realize, oops, that's not what I thought I wrote. I thought it was very clear and it's not. Or I thought I was telling a compelling story, but my friend pointed out that there's no dialogue in this entire chapter. So many little things like that, that if you just trust that someone else is going to help you, you'll be able to get the kind of feedback you need to do some of those revisions. When are you ready for an editor? I think when you feel that you've done everything on your own that you can do. Um, I I thought about that a lot on my own book. When is it ever going to be good enough? I do think I'll know when that is, and I believe it's going to be about 3 revisions. Just based on what I've done and where I'm headed, I'm on my first revision. I think I'm going to have 2 more ahead. But this is the big one. This is the one where I'm really struggling in many ways because the story has changed. Then the next 2 will be enhancement revisions. And at some point, you have to say, this is the best I can do with this. It's my first book, or it's my third book, or it's the 10th in the series, or whatever it is. And now it's time to put it out in the world. Hire an
at?
editor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said there is when you feel like you've done the best you can do, right? If you can really look in the mirror and say, with the time and energy and talent that I have on this particular project, this is as good as I can get it on my own.
Mhm.
Then it's time to reach out for an editor for some support. But I think so many of us are rushing or hurrying and wanna get things done or just don't want to do revisions, and so they're not giving it their all the way they perhaps could. And giving it your all doesn't mean quitting your job so that you can write your book. Giving it all means giving it the time and the energy that you can in your life for where you're at.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think if you really shouldn't be spending money on publishing a book, an editor will try to gently let you know that your book might need a little bit more work first. And
Mm,
then that person, many editors also work as coaches, not in the same way that you do, but in helping an author bring whatever book they have at whatever stage it's at and bring it along so it's more publishable. And that's coaching. That's different from editing, as you know. But many editors do offer that service. Those who don't usually have colleagues that they can refer someone to for the extra help. Again, though, it's your book. As an independent author, you get to say, nope, this is it. I want to publish it. Just make it look good. Okay, that's your
yeah,
call.
yeah, absolutely. When you are looking at a manuscript for the first time, say you're doing that test edit, what are the things that you're looking for? I mean, myself, when a new client hands over pages, and I'm always on the edge of my seat. Okay, let's see what we got here, right? And there's
Yeah.
certain things that quite often within one paragraph, a lot of people are just not familiar with point of view. I can read one paragraph and go, oh, they've already head hopped, and we're one one paragraph in, right? So, what sort of things are you on the lookout for as a copy editor?
For fiction, That's a really great example because you can usually tell on the first page if this is going to be a good story or not. It may not, and it may not be even to the point where you understand what's going on in the story, but the way it's written can tell a lot about whether or not this is a talented author, someone who should be publishing, or someone who is in need of a little more training or a little more time in perfecting their skills. Um, People often are angry with agents, literary agents, because how can they tell? They only read a page, but you really can tell
Oh,
if you know what,
absolutely.
yeah, if you've read enough. I mean, as a reader, we all open a book, read a page or two and go, nope, not for me. It's the same thing
Definitely.
with agents and editors. So as a copy editor, I'm looking at what am I going to have to do to bring this book up to the standard it needs to be publishable. Um, Word choice, sentence structure, punctuation, even the way it's laid out. You know, how does this author work? I'm a very flexible editor. If you want to do Google Docs or you want to have no indents and line spaces between your paragraph, whatever you want, you know, it's your book. You get to make that choice. If you're trying to submit a book to an agent or a publishing house, that's a different story. And then it does have to very definitely conform to specific formats. But I'm not somebody's teacher or parent who's going to impose things on them. I really do discuss with authors what their goal is for the book, what their goal is for the editing process. Are we on the same page? I've read your first 10 pages or whatever it was that I was doing the sample on. Here's what I think it needs, and this is why I think it needs it. And let's have a conversation. Let's see if you agree that the punctuation is a mess and you need to go through it before you hire me and do the best you can with improving it. It'll save you money. Anything that takes my time costs you money. And people respond to that because nobody wants to spend more than they have to.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah. Listen, it'll cost you X number of dollars if I do it for you, and it'll cost a whole lot less if you do it first and then send it to me. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that I usually look for. If it's a nonfiction, it really depends on what the genre is. Memoir is so different from self-help, which is different from a history or a textbook. There are just so many different genres that it's hard to say. But page count is often a good indicator to me of how strong or weak a writer is. Because if you know what the page count should be for your genre and you're way over or way under, this book might not be ready.
Great. I've never thought of that in those terms before, but it's absolutely true. So when let's say you've agreed to work with someone and they've agreed to hire you, that conversation of here's how we're going to approach things, here's the agreement that we're going to come to, what does that look like? Is that a Zoom call like this, or is that an email conversation back and forth? Is there a style guide, the document that you land on at the end? What does that negotiation process look like in terms of how you're going to collectively approach the manuscript?
That really depends on the editor. Everybody is a little bit different, has a little bit different process. Myself personally, I provide that sample edit, which is usually around 1,000 words, 10 pages or so, double spaced, to give that author an idea of how I work. I do it all with track changes. I do exactly what I would do if I were to edit the entire manuscript. I leave my comments. I make the corrections with tracking. I make suggestions. If there's something in the content that needs to be enhanced, I'll mention that. Something that I think is off on a tangent that doesn't really need to be there, I'll suggest deleting it. I might make suggestions if it's a kind of book where there are some call outs or some box text for auxiliary information. I'll point that out if it's in those sample pages. So I try to give them a really full picture of what an edit is going to look like. There are authors, I mean, there are agents, sorry, editors. There are editors who prefer to do it all on Zoom. I don't, because I think having a written record of everything is really important. And
Mm,
I also, the agreements in writing, the book is in writing. So one of the things that I've found over the years is authors who aren't real confident in their writing will want to go over everything with the editor.
mm,
Let me explain what I meant. No, 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 no. You're not going to be there with with the reader to explain what you meant. If it's there, you meant it. And if it's not there, they're going to have to guess whether you meant it or not. So that's an important lesson I think that editors help authors with is understanding that what's on the page is the only opportunity you have to influence your reader. If you're not getting the concept across, fiction or nonfiction, if you're not getting it across, they're not going to call you and say, "Hey, did you mean this in chapter 27?"
how many times have you heard me be in discussion with an author on a hot seat or a coaching call of some kind, and then I say, take everything you just said to me and put it on the page.
Yes, yes. And I laugh every time because it's such a common problem. But Kevin, I meant this. But that's what I said. No, it isn't what you said. Well, I meant it. Then write it.
Indeed. Well, having worked with me for quite some time now, you know I have a long list of personal pet peeves, things that drive me crazy in people's manuscripts. Do you have a particular pet peeve or a few of your own? Is there anything that always rubs you the wrong way when you're reading through your clients' work?
Well, I'm not sure if I have to thank you or scold you because you've added to my
Oh
list with
no.
some of your own.
I'm sending my neuroses out.
Yeah. It's really interesting though because we don't realize the word crutches or the sentence
Mm,
crutches that we all have. We all have pet words, we all have certain ways of doing things that seem perfectly normal to us because we do them all the time. But when someone else points out that you've had your character turn 6 different times on this page, that's one of your words, I know. And
it
now it's
sure
one
is.
of my words. I can't not see it anymore. But pet, I'm trying to think if I have, I know I do have some specific pet peeves. I just am not thinking of any off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Well, that's good because me, they keep me up at night. If you can kind of
Yeah.
push them away until you're working, all the better. All the better. Well, a little bit about this transition in your life into being a novelist. Before we hit record here, you were saying you're really not even actively marketing for more clients. You've got so many referrals coming in. You're paying the bills with your editorial work, and most of your focus now is really on your career as an author. So tell me about how that process has been so far.
Oh, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. Several years ago, as I was approaching retirement age, I decided I wanted to finally try to do some writing. I had done a lot of writing when I was younger. I've had a couple of pieces published many moons ago, but I never really did anything as extensive as a novel. I had an idea in my head of what I wanted, a story I wanted to tell, and I wrote a couple of scenes and then I got stuck. I didn't know what to do with them. I know how I wanted to end it. I knew I had these couple of interesting scenes that I wanted to include, but how do you get up from the beginning, which I had no clue how to start, to the end, way down there, maybe 70, 80, 90,000 words from now? I was truly stuck. So I thought, as I always do, I'll just teach myself how to do this. So, some people watch YouTube videos to learn how to fix their plumbing. I watch them to learn how to write a book. So I started with that. I started taking some courses. I joined some groups. I joined a local group, a local writing group that was very motivating, but it's not even a critique group. It's just a let's sit down and write for an hour together group, which was fun. It gave me the social outlet I wanted with sort of the structure of writing at least once a week. But I wasn't doing a lot more than that. I was just trying to learn, trying to learn. Well, I got to the point where I realized that I needed a lot more knowledge before I could write a full novel. So I decided to start with short stories. And I did that for a year. I wrote a lot of short stories. I entered some contests, had a lot of fun with it, learned that I love to torture my characters. It's one of
As a
my
good writer should.
it's so much fun. But then I was watching a webinar that you were teaching at, and coincidentally, there was another instructor, another coach who I also felt a connection with as I was watching her. And I thought, one of these two people I'm going to hire. Not sure who, but I really like both of them. And I think it must have been karma or something, because within about 48 hours, I got an email from you, a newsletter type email, and you were opening a new group. And I thought, okay, this is my sign. So that that was that, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. Is it do, is it challenging ever for you to be on the student side? As a, you're an expert in this industry. You even did some teaching back in the day, right?
Mhm.
How does it feel to kind of be on the student end of things and listening to me lecture on stuff?
I consider myself a lifelong learner. I've
Mm.
always loved learning about new things, um, learning new skills, preferably not math oriented. That's definitely still not my forte.
This is probably why we
But
connected.
yeah. But I just love learning new things, and this has been such an amazing education for me to learn how to write a book. Your training has been just so helpful, and one of the things that I love about working with you, Kevin, is that you're so positive all the time, even when I know somebody, maybe me, maybe another member of the group, is making you just want to tear your hair out, but you never lose it. You're always very cool about it. And you're always so encouraging. And I think that's what we need when we're learning something new, whether it's how to ride a bike when we're 5 or 6, or how to write a novel when we're a couple decades past that. It's just important to feel like you have that support under you to say, I know you can do this. Yeah, you're not there yet, but you're going there. You're getting there, and I'm going to help you get there. It's a wonderful feeling.
Well, it's been such a delight working with you as well, particularly on group calls. As you know, at times I do defer to your expertise. For a long time, I would never even call myself an editor. I was like, I'm just a coach. I don't have the eye to be an editor. I do feel like I've evolved to a point where I could pretty confidently say I can edit. But I'm still not a copy editor. And so at times, as you know, I'll say, Candice, do you agree with me here? And it's just so nice having another expert there on the calls to share your opinions and to either back me up or point it out when I'm getting things wrong. Either way, I love having you there.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I think you call yourself a coach who also edits. I'm an editor who also coaches.
Mm.
They're kind of two sides of the same coin, because if you're good at one, you at least have a pretty strong knowledge of the other. You can't otherwise. You can't be as effective at your job if you can't, in my case, if I can't explain why I made a choice to an author, I'm not as much used to them as when I can. And for you to be able to take our work, the students that you have, to take our work and to say, look, if you do this or you try that, it's going to be stronger. And that is worth 10 classes. It really is. To be
Mm.
able to see the improvement in what you've written in your own words, and have somebody who knows more than you do or has more expertise in that area be able to say, look at what this small change does to improve your work. That's golden. That's golden.
Well, Candice, I know you're not actively seeking more clients, so should we send people to your website, or should we tell them to just leave you alone, let you write your novel?
No, 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 no. I'm not retired because I can't seem to get myself to retire. I love what I do. It's really fun. And every time I think, oh, good, I'm going to have a break now, I finished this project, something new will come along and I'll say, well, maybe just this one more because it's such an interesting idea. uh, I don't seem to be able to say no, and I don't think I'll probably ever completely retire because I do love what I do. The writing is just another part of that, I think, and it's a more creative part for me because I'm writing fiction, but it's fun to work with other people's work and to be able to help them again, help them realize their dreams, improve their thing, their work to a point where they're super proud of what they've published. That's a wonderful thing. It really is.
Well,
So
let's
my
yeah,
website
let's hit
is
the listeners
ancient.
with that URL.
Yeah, it's ancient. It's changeitupediting.com. Uh, I created it when I became a freelancer, and I have not really updated it in a long, long time. I used to do a weekly blog. I took all those down years ago because I didn't want to have to go through and update everything. And the world changes.
Sure
So
does.
do, rules of grammar and all of the things. So I don't have any of that up there. What I do have is an introduction to me, a list of the books that I've edited, some of the things that some of the authors I've worked with have said about me. And one of these days, when I get a little bit closer to the end of writing my book, I will have a more updated website and I'll have that editing part be just part of it. But right now, that's all I have. So, if somebody is looking for an editor, I can't promise that I'm the right person for them. And I do think it's important to have a good fit with an editor. I think you have to really trust somebody if you're going to turn over your baby. I know I will have that situation coming up, and I'm going to look long and hard for the right person who I can work with on that. But if I'm the right person for somebody, I'm still interested in some new projects. They're fun.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, it's been such a pleasure working with you and such a delight to finally get you on the podcast and get to have this conversation with you. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the Writing Coach podcast today.
Thank you, Kevin. I've had such a great time, and I really appreciate you having me on.